Good morning, boys and girls. I'm so happy to see you today. Our story for this morning comes from the book of Judges. Let's take a listen. Joshua led the people to many victories against their enemies. But after Joshua died, the people of Israel disobeyed the Lord. Instead of driving the Canaanites out of the land, they lived alongside these idol worshippers. God said to Israel, "What is this you have done?" So now I say, I will not drive them out before you, but they shall become thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be snares to you. Since Israel had not driven out their enemies, God allowed these enemies to conquer them. But when Israel cried for help, God delivered them. Sadly, they did not learn their lesson. Again and again, Israel turned away from the Lord to serve false gods. So the Lord allowed the Philistines to conquer the Israelites and to rule over them for 40 years. Then one day, the Lord appeared as an angel to an Israelite woman who was married to a man named Manoah. He said to her, "You have been waiting for a child for a long time. But now the time has come for you to have a son. He will be special from the moment of his birth. I am going to use him to rescue Israel from the Philistines." God told Manoah's wife never to cut the boy's hair. This was to show that he was set apart for the service of God. In time, Manoah's wife did have a son. She named him Samson, and she let his hair grow long. When Samson became a young man, the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him. One day, while he was walking, a roaring lion leapt out at him. But the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon Samson, who killed the lion with his bare hands. But instead of giving God the glory, Samson became proud. He was disrespectful to his parents, demanding that they get a wife from among the Philistines instead of among God's people. When they tried to correct their son, Samson did not listen. But even though Samson was sinful, God used him to judge the Philistines who were ruling over God's people. Once, Samson caught 300 foxes, and he tied their tails together. He put torches between each pair and lit them, and then he sent the pairs of foxes running off to burn down the crops of the Philistines. When the Philistines found out what happened, they came to fight the people of Judah. They demanded that Samson be tied up and given over to them. Samson agreed to be tied up with strong new ropes. After his hands were bound, the Israelites took Samson to the Philistines. And the Spirit of the Lord fell upon him again, and he easily broke the ropes. Then he saw a jawbone of a donkey lying on the ground. Samson picked it up and used it as a weapon to strike down 1,000 men. Samson made many enemies as a judge over Israel, especially among the Philistines. But he was too strong for them to fight, so they set traps for him instead. Even then, Samson escaped. Finally, the Philistines came up with a plan. Samson loved a Philistine woman named Delilah. The Philistines promised her a treasure of silver coins if she could find out the secret of Samson's great strength. Delilah agreed, and the new trap was set. The next time Samson came to visit Delilah, she asked, "Tell me the secret of your great strength. Is there any way you can be tied up so that you can escape?" Samson lied. He said, "If anyone ties me up with 7 fresh bowstrings, I will lose my power." So while Samson slept, Delilah tied him up just as Samson had said. Then she shouted, "Samson, the Philistines are here to capture you." Samson woke up and snapped the bowstrings as if they were nothing. Delilah complained, "You lied to me. Now tell me the truth. What's the secret of your strength?" Samson lied again. This time he said, "If anyone ties me with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become weak as any other man." But when she tied him up with new ropes and she called the Philistines, Samson broke the new ropes easily. A third time Delilah asked Samson the secret of his strength. A third time Samson lied, and when the Philistines came, Samson escaped. Day after day, Delilah pestered him to tell her the truth. "How can you say you love me if you won't tell me your secret?" Finally, Samson was so tired of arguing, he told her about his vow to God to never shave his head. Samson should not have done this, but in his pride, he thought he would not lose his strength. This time while he slept, Delilah had a man shave his head. And when the Philistines came, Samson was easily captured because God left Samson to fight with his own strength. The Philistines gouged out Samson's eyes and put him in prison. After Samson had been in prison for a while, the Philistines brought Samson to the temple of their God to mock him and to praise their God for his defeat. The Philistines were sure this would be a great day, but they forgot something. While Samson had been in prison, his hair had grown long again, as God had wanted it to be. And when Samson entered the temple, he asked the attendant to put his hands on the pillars that held up the building so they could help him stand. Then he prayed, "Oh God, please strengthen me just once more." God heard his prayer, and when Samson pushed against the pillars, his strength returned. The whole roof of the building tumbled down on Samson, on the Philistine rulers, and on all the people who had gathered there. They all died. Although God used Samson to save Israel from their enemies, Samson fell into sin and pride. He thought he could be strong all by himself without God's help. He became distracted by the pleasures of the world. This story teaches us that no ordinary man could ever bring lasting salvation to God's people because we're all sinners. One day, though, God sent a deliverer named Jesus who was very different. Unlike Samson, God's son, Jesus, did not fall into sin. Though he was God, he humbled himself and came as a man to live a perfect life and die on the cross in our place to provide a salvation that lasts forever.